Howdy hey, how is everybody doing, and welcome back to Disney Daily. Today we are breaking down episode 6, The Vending Machine, on the Monsters at Work TV series. At the start of the episode, we see a vending machine with what looks like various beverages inside. As the camera pans out, we see that Tyler is trying to get a drink from the machine, but it starts making a horrible humming sound. Confused, Tyler turns around and tells Val that something must be wrong with the old machine and that perhaps it is broken. Val, with a smile on her face, tells Tyler that this is more than just an old machine. She tells Tyler that the machine is a girl and her name is Vendi. She also tells him that she was personally named by Fritz and that she has been a Mifter for a very long time. Val then continues on with her introduction on all things Vendi and tells him that she does get moody sometimes, so in order to get a drink from her, he must perform a certain ritual. First, he must say, "Hi, Vendi," then bump the left side with his fist 3 times, wait a beat, and then one big final bump. So Tyler tries the ritual with Vendi, but accidentally causes the machine to go haywire and completely break down. The next scene shows us a monster who looks like a walking bagpipe who begins to play music. The camera then cuts to Fritz, who seems to be giving a eulogy for Vendi, the vending machine that Tyler accidentally destroyed. Fritz begins to cry, and all of the Mifters are equally upset. A puzzled Tyler turns to Val and says, "I'm confused. We are having a funeral for a vending machine?" Fritz says out loud that she's not just any vending machine. He goes on to tell the story of how he and Vendi started at Monsters Inc. together at the same time. As he tells the story, the group becomes even more upset, and Vendi is then wheeled out of the Mifter break room. Fritz then goes into his office and continues to cry, and the Mifters listen outside of his door. Tyler says to Val and Duncan that it's all his fault. Val tries to reassure him that it isn't, and Duncan tells him of course it is. We then cut to Mike and Sully's office, where we see the 2 monsters and Celia, who seem to be in a meeting. The meeting is all about profits. Mike, who thinks profits are good, is casually golfing. But the 2 accountant monsters for the company reveal to Mike and Sully that profits are actually way down. Mike cuts them off and says, right, but with me and Sully in charge, company morale has never been higher. The accountant monster with the glasses replies, "Morale has actually never been lower." To which Mike says, "Well, maybe your graph thing is upside down." Sully then tells Mike that they aren't generating enough laugh power and that they need to find a way to cheer folks up and trim the budget. The other financial advisor in the meeting then tells Mike that they are going to need big cuts. The next scene shows us the outside of the Mifter break room, and we hear Fritz, who seems to be on a phone call. It is revealed to Fritz that he must cut some of his staff, which he is not happy to hear. The Mifters are all listening in on the convo and come to the conclusion that someone will be cut. Duncan, confident that Tyler will be cut, says out loud, "Bad day to break Fritz's favorite vending machine, eh, college boy?" We then cut to Val and Tyler talking in a private room. Tyler is confessing to Val that he probably will be let go, and that he deserves it because he is not a very good Mifter and can't seem to fix anything. Tyler begins to reflect on his journey thus far at Monsters Inc. and tells Val all of the things he is going to miss about the company. He reveals that one of the things he is most sad about losing is the other Mifters. We then cut to Rose and Mike. It seems that Mike has come to Rose for some advice on how to boost company morale, given that she is always watching. Rose says to Mike, "How about you approve the paperwork on time? That would make me smile. I've heard I have a pretty infectious grin." Mike looks disgusted. We then hear Tyler and Val in the background, who are buying a drooler cooler for Fritz to try and cheer him up so that he won't fire Tyler. Mike overhears the conversation and asks the 2, "What's wrong with Fritz?" The Mifters reveal that Tyler broke his favorite vending machine, and that is the cause of his pain. Mike says enthusiastically, he needs a new one, an upgrade, the perfect way to boost morale. And if we boost morale, we boost profits, and no one needs to be let go. We then cut to the Mifter break room, where it seems Mike followed through on his word and bought Fritz a new vending machine that seems to not only have drooler coolers, but food as well. Fritz clearly misses Vendi and isn't happy about the new machine. But once he goes over to try it and realizes just how high-tech it is, he falls in love. As Fritz makes his own concoction by pushing various buttons on the screen, the machine then shoots out his beverage. Fritz tries it and is instantly delighted by the product. He hugs the machine, thanks it, and gives it the name Vendi too. As Fritz heads to the office, he also thanks the Mifter team for the machine. The Mifters all rejoice because they believe they have dodged getting fired. We then cut to the main break room in the company, where Needleman, Fungus, George Sanderson, and Smitty seem to be playing foosball. Mike and Sully are watching them play. Sully turns to Mike and asks, "Aren't we supposed to be cutting back on spending money?" And Mike tells Sully not to worry and reveals that he got the table to help boost company morale. We then cut back to Fritz, who has pictures of of the Mifters spread out all over his desk. You can tell he is thinking hard about which employee he must cut. Meanwhile, all of the Mifters are anxiously waiting outside to hear his verdict. Tyler then decides to get a snack out of the vending machine, but Duncan says he isn't allowed to get his favorite snack. The two begin pushing various buttons on the machine, causing it to completely shut down. Duncan then says, well, now you are definitely getting fired. Tyler then says, I better fix this thing. Duncan tells him he can't fix anything and that he best leave it to him. Duncan then tries to fix the machine, and although he gets it up and running, it doesn't quite operate the same. As Fritz tries to get something from the machine, not only is the wrong product dispensed, but all the products begin to fly out of the machine towards them. Fritz tells all of the Mifters to take cover in his office, and so they do. We then cut to Mike and Sully standing in the lobby, staring at a painting of a green circle. Mike turns to Sully and says in a peaceful manner, wow, it's like speaking to me. What's it saying to you, Sully? Sully replies, that we're broke. Mike reveals that he has bought a bunch of paintings. One is a Vincent van Gogh, a Claude Monet, and a Michelangelo. Again, Mike justifies his spending to Sully, saying, culture boosts morale, and morale boosts profits. Just then, George Sanderson comes up right behind Mike and Sully. He takes a look at one of the paintings and says, ooh, an Andy Warhol. Very inspiring, and walks away. Mike turns to Sully and says, see? We then cut back to the Mifter break room. The machine is still shooting out food and beverages all over the room. In the office, Fritz yells at Duncan for taking out some of the parts in the machine, and Duncan begins to blame Tyler for breaking it in the first place. Fritz tells everyone to remain calm and that he will just call the vending machine maintenance. As Fritz tries to call the vending machine maintenance, the phone line cuts out. Thinking that this is the end, Duncan begins to write a very dramatic letter to his mother, and heroic music begins to play in the background. The letter reads, Dear Mother, I am writing this to you on the front lines. A vending machine has gone rogue and has declared us its foe. Do not despair nor pine for my safe return. Know that I fought with valor. Your loving son, Duncan P. Anderson. Just then the music stops and Tyler is heard from the other room telling the others that they should remain there and that he will go out and fix it. Duncan says loudly, no, and let you be the hero? Let a good Mifter save the Mifters, referring to himself, obviously. Duncan then climbs into the break room and uses a chair as a shield as he approaches the vending machine. As he finally makes his way to the machine, he unplugs it and says out loud, who's your hero now? And starts to gloat. As Fritz and the others start to emerge from the room, they tell Duncan to turn around because the machine begins to start up once again, this time pulling Duncan inside. Duncan begins to scream and we cut back to Mike, who is handing out envelopes to his employees. Sully asks Mike, what's in the envelopes? And Mike reveals that they contain money and that he is doing a new thing called Free Money Mondays and that morale has never been better because of it. Sully then asks, where did you get all the money from? To which Mike says, I got it from underneath your bed in your emergency jar. We then cut back to the break room where Duncan is still being attacked by the machine. The Mifters agree that they must save Duncan, and Val tells Tyler that this is his time to shine. She tells Tyler that while he might not be good at fixing things, he is good at breaking them, and that this is the time to break Vendi too. Tyler hesitantly moves towards the machine and lets out a gigantic roar. Then there is a huge explosion, and as the camera pans back, we see Tyler carrying Duncan, and the Mifters begin to celebrate and congratulate Tyler on a job well done. A sad Fritz then tells the group that he has some news that he must share. We then cut back to Mike and Sully's office, who learn that all of their efforts have paid off. The laugh canister output had doubled, and the company morale was sky high. Back with the Mifters, Fritz tells them that he must cut a member of their staff due to the budget cuts. Fritz goes on to tell them that he can't bear to see any of them go because they are all like family to him, which was a really touching moment and made me love Fritz that much more. He then reveals that just like Vendi, who was old, broken, and had to go, that he too is old, broken, and has to go. Val asks sadly, so you're retiring? The phone then rings in Fritz's office. He says, oh, it must be Monsters Resources calling about my last day. As he shuts the door behind him, Tyler turns to the others and says, this isn't right. Fritz is the most kind and generous monster I've ever met. I'm the one that should go, not him. Just then, Fritz sprints out of the office and reveals the good news that he gets to stay. We then cut to the next morning and see Val pulling up next to the break room. As she approaches her fellow Mifters, she asks, why are we all waiting outside? And Fritz tells her that Tyler wouldn't let them inside until she got there. Fritz knocks on the door and Tyler answers, telling them to come in but to keep their eyes closed. Once inside, he tells them to open their eyes and yells, surprise! The Mifters are so shocked to learn that their fellow fellow coworker has gone out of his way to get Vendi back. Tyler reveals to them that he was able to fix Vendi all on his own. Fritz then tells Tyler to give her a try. So he begins to do the ritual Val showed him in the beginning of the episode, and this time it works. The Mifters all cheers each other over some drooler coolers, and the episode ends there. In my opinion, this episode really showed how far Tyler's character development has gone. He seems to have really developed feelings for his fellow Mifters, which is strikingly different from his feelings towards them in the first episode. I think all arrows point to Tyler staying with the Mifters by the end of the season, rather than becoming a jokester. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for being my guest here at Disney Daily. Until next time.